All right, today we're trying something new on the Level Up Russellville podcast. I'm thinking a midweek Wednesday solo audio only podcast that talks about lessons I've learned in business, lessons I've learned from speaking to people here on the Level Up Russellville podcast and whatnot. So if you have any comments on this, any feedback once you listen to it, you can actually provide that on Spotify down below. But let's get right into it because today I want to talk about obsessing over your business. Right? Because eventually, at some point over the past 3 years, I decided to stop chasing money and I decided to start becoming a complete master of my craft. And 3 years in, sometimes I feel the farthest away I've ever been from being a master. I know that's not true because I'm much more skilled than I was 3 years ago. But spoiler alert, it's a process. It's a process that you'll never complete. But it's important to be on that journey. Once I started focusing on becoming a master, my confidence skyrocketed in creating content like this, pitching my service to people, meeting people in person especially. This past year has been focused on, really since the summer, June, has been focused entirely on physical networking, which is something I had never done before in my life. And I'm still pretty awkward sometimes, I feel like, but I have met so many new people and gotten so much better at it in just the past few months. Because I'm focusing on becoming a master at it. I'm reading books about it. I'm trying to learn how to just talk to people. And for some people, it comes naturally. But anyways, I became obsessive. I'm becoming obsessive. I try to be obsessive every day. And maybe you're thinking, yeah, Tal, duh. I mean, obviously, you need to obsess if you're going to win. I mean, obviously, you do, yeah. But I've seen way too many people, including my past self, obsess over the wrong metrics. Instead of obsessing over like the actual results you're bringing to your client or your product or whatever it is you're trying to do, the processes, I want to step that back. When it comes to building a business, do not obsess over the outcome. Meaning, if you want to get to a certain revenue goal, don't obsess over being at that revenue goal. Obsess over your process, the things that you're going to do to take you to that point. And in my case, in the agency space, the marketing agency space, the thing that is going to take me to my financial goals is actually the results that I'm getting from my clients, right? The impact I can have to their business, the money I can put in their pocket with, frankly put, they already have the product. And I only work with people that have good products and a good system, right? A way to scale. Maybe they just need that person in their team, in their ecosystem that's going to connect the dots for them. All too often, back in my early days, I was desperate for opportunity. And this is something I don't regret, but you have to be self-aware about it. I worked with clients that didn't have a good product, maybe they had a good product, but they didn't have a system, their own processes, right? Maybe they had a good idea, but they didn't have a way to really scale it and sell it. There was this one company with tons of inventory issues. He's actually I'll try to give some details without getting too specific, but he was one of the biggest names in the skate industry previously, back before 2000. And he was wanting to come back into the industry. Great guy. I hope to meet this guy one day. He's out in the other side of the country, but he didn't have his processes dialed in when it comes to getting that product out to his customers. I just needed opportunity. I needed learning experience, and yeah, it worked out in the end, I guess. But sometimes business owners obsess over the wrong things. They obsess over the outcome. Maybe their first $10,000 month or whatever that is. And sometimes it's the industry's fault for these expectations, especially if you've ever gotten into like the course black hole of YouTube, where you come across these really authentic content creators that are selling mentorships or communities or courses. I'm not going to say they're all on the same level of how I'm about to describe it, but many of them are designed to sell you. It is a very strategic process. These videos that are giving out all this value. It's a legitimate process. I don't want to demonize it too hard because it's a process I would recommend you use to market yourself in whatever industry you're in. Add a lot of value for free online and then have a paid product in the back end. But it becomes a problem when, well, maybe not a problem, but it starts to irk me when the product is thousands of dollars and it's designed and it's promising you riches beyond your wildest dreams in a set amount of time, right? $10,000 a month within 90 days. They often don't work that way. And I know that firsthand because I've been involved in multiple courses, one of which was well into seven figures annually. We actually built that company up. It was a course that I bought when I first started for about $2,500, $3,000, something like that to start my marketing agency. And I made it work. Like I'm not out here saying it was a scam because it wasn't, but once I got involved with the company, I was a coach in the company, and my job was to help other students, other customers build their companies while I was also doing it in tandem. And I loved it. I worked with hundreds, literally hundreds of people on a one-on-one basis. It took so much of my time. That's what ultimately led to like my burnout and my company kind of falling apart because I didn't have the time for it. In fact, I remember I was in Miami and me and a friend had combined our agencies together because we saw an excellent gap in the market for a content agency. Because when it comes to especially e-commerce growth, paid ads will get you nowhere. It's all about the content, the creative. What is the actual value you're building in this video? Most brands run ads without actually adding value, and they fail, they waste money. So we figured out a way to fix this. Long story short, we were doing pretty well. We had hit our first $20,000 month in build. That wasn't profit, but in gross. And I had a decision to make. I was in Miami with the people I was working with on this course, the CEO of that company. And I had a decision to make. I'd actually tried to quit the week before, but they convinced me to go ahead and come out to Miami. Anyways, they metaphorically wined and dined me, and I decided to stay and walk away from a company that ultimately I think that it fell apart, but that's what companies do. They grow and fall apart as processes break down and whatnot. But kind of got off on a little tangent there. I could honestly, I should do a whole podcast series where I break down that entire year I was with that company because it was such a crazy year. Like it was, and it taught me a lot. It also taught me that there are some really shady practices in that coaching industry when it comes to drop shipping and agencies and SMMA and this and that. And all it comes down to is how it's actually marketed, the promises made. You can do it completely ethically, and that's ultimately one of the reasons I had to leave. It's because it wasn't lining up with my moral compass, I suppose. So, obsessing over your growth. Let's get back on track here. When I say you should obsess over your growth, I'm not talking about cash hitting the stripe, but growth on the personal and team level. Your team is everything. We can take two entrepreneurs, both in the game for 6 months, and the one who focuses more on growth will always come out on top a year and a half, 2 years down the line. Always, right? I've seen it happen many, many times with the hundreds of people I've worked with. From my initial cohort of peers, some of them may have closed more clients in the first year than me, but yet 2 years later, I was the one left standing. On the flip side, a couple of guys that started around the same time as me are now running even more successful e-commerce brands and signing large equity deals, right? It's a spectrum because they focused more on growth than I did. So it's very important you start learning how to shift mindsets, not from cash collected, but experience gained, results given to the client, even if it means kind of deprioritizing profitability in the short term. I don't know if this is going to be valuable to anyone. I hope it is. But obsessing over your business is actually the most important thing you can do. And you got to do it in the right ways. So thank you for listening to this little one-off lessons learned. I've got many more of these. I've actually got an entire vault of posts that I was kind of like reading this back in a way. I was adding to it as well with more up-to-date things. I wrote that at the beginning of this year, January 18th, Obsessing Over Your Business. I've got an entire vault full of these that I would love to make a little podcast episode on each one. But go ahead and on Spotify, Comment down below if you listen to this. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you want to hear next. Maybe you didn't like it. Maybe you did. If you didn't, I'll take that with a grain of salt. But you know how it is. You gotta, especially when you're making content, you're putting yourself out there. This is something everyone's got to learn. You got to learn when to accept criticism. It's always important to notice it, right? And know you can always improve. I mean, I've stumbled over my words 100 times in this just very episode here. But when you do put yourself out there, you just also have to accept the product's out, move on, get better. Don't worry about what people are saying on the back end if it's negative, because it can stonewall you from moving forward. So, anyways, let it come in, guys and girls, everyone. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk later. Bye-bye.